Hello there, so welcome to Lawrence Explains Online Academic Tuition. This video is for you, the busy GCSE student getting ready for this year's mock exams and the exams proper. So in this video I'm going to take a look at the English Language Paper 2 Writer's Viewpoint and Perspectives, and we're going to run through question 1 in this video. So we're going to look at the source, we're going to look at source A, and then we'll look at question 1 as well. So here's the rubric. Just very briefly, we've got two sources here, and we are going to take a look at those. So I've got them pasted up on bit paper. So let's begin by reading through the text. So in 2005, Ben Fogle and James Cracknell set off together in a 7-week race across the Atlantic Ocean in a rowing boat called Spirit. In their book, The Crossing, Ben describes what happened one night as he rowed and James slept. So we've got some nice context here for us, just giving us an overview of what the situation is. So Ben, it was still dark. We had at least 3 hours of darkness to go before daybreak, and as always, I had the sunrise shift. The ocean had continued to build with an ever-increasing wind that was gusting at 40 knots. The swell had grown, but conditions were becoming increasingly frenzied. I began to feel vulnerable again. If we can just make it to daybreak, I thought, it will be easier to read the waves and prepare for the breakers. Our boat was brand spanking new and bought straight from the race organisers. It had coped well in the seas we had experienced thus far incredibly well. I rowed on, worried by the deteriorating weather, and I thought of my wife back home. I longed to be with her and away from this intimidating ocean. As I rowed, a barely perceptible blue hue appeared on the skyline. The swell was gathering, and the breaking waves were becoming more frequent. Come on, son, I thought, willing the day to break. Something wasn't right. I watched as a vast wave gathered behind the boat, soaring above the cabin, a wall of white water towering over our tiny boat. Once again I dug the oars in to propel us forward, but the wave was too big. For a moment it felt like we were moving backwards as we were sucked into the belly of the wave, the horizon disappearing as the churning surf enveloped the stern of the boat. I felt it lift as a torrent of water crashed over the boat, and I felt myself falling backwards. I was aware of the boat collapsing on top of me. I struggled to pull my feet from the stirrups to no avail. The world went black. I felt a weight on top of me, and then a rush of cold water as my body was brutally submerged into the bottomless Atlantic Ocean. My feet were sucked from my shoes as I clung onto the oars for dear life. But then they too were dragged from my clasp. My mind went blank as I tumbled through the surf, spun around roughly like clothes in a washing machine. I was somewhere underwater, but which way was up? Everything was midnight black. I panicked as I grabbed the water, desperate for something to clutch to. There was nothing, no boat, just inky, cold water. I'd been underwater for a seeming eternity and had started to panic. It felt as though my lungs were collapsing and I struggled to find which way to swim. I felt my hand break the surface as my body burst from the steps of the ocean. "Ah!" I gasped as my body screamed for air. "James," I cried. There was no sign of him nor the boat. I was in the middle of the ocean without a life jacket, being tossed around in the surf like a rag doll. I spun around in the water, gripped by panic. There was the boat, a black upturned hull. "James," I screamed again. Nothing. Nothing in life had prepared me for this. No amount of planning could have readied me. What the hell now? Who would ever find me out here, hundreds of miles from the nearest boat, let alone land? I had to get back onto the boat. My mind was numb with the shock, but somehow I made it back to the upturned hull and clung on. There was still no sign of James. Why wasn't the Spirit righting herself? I fretted as I hauled myself up onto her keel. I could feel the boat listing. Slowly but surely the boat began to turn on top of me. I clutched onto the grab line as I collapsed back into the water, the boat springing upright. I clung on, silent and in shock. "Ben," I heard James's cry. He was alive, thank God. I'm here, I squeaked, still clutching the grab line. All around us the ocean was strewn with debris, loose equipment from the deck, After 5 weeks at sea, we had become complacent and had long stopped lashing things down. We could only watch as all our worldly possessions drifted away into the rolling ocean. Okay, so this is the extract, part A. So this is a fairly dramatic situation that James Cracknell and Ben Fogle find themselves in on this race across the Atlantic Ocean. Wow. Okay, so let's have a look at question 1. Question 1 is very straightforward. Question 1 on all the GCSE papers, regardless of which syllabus you do, is a content question. It's a content question. It does not require any analysis. You just have to pick out the correct content. So choose four statements which are true. So we're going to go back into the text and we're going to pick out the relevant information. Shade the circles for the ones that you think are true. Choose a maximum of 4. Okay, so let's read them through. So it will be dark for another 3 hours. Ben usually rode the sunrise shift. The waves were starting to calm down. It was the first time during the race that Ben felt he was at risk. If it were light, Ben thought he would be able to judge the danger. Ben felt homesick. Ben was enjoying this early morning shift. There was no sign of daybreak. So, one tip for this, depends how you want to approach this, but one thing I would probably do here is just get rid of answers that you know are definitely not true. So ones that you know are incorrect. So, do we have any there that are obvious? Obviously incorrect. I think C is obviously incorrect. The waves are starting to calm down. Well, let's go back and have a look. So let's have a look at the early part. So we had at least 3 hours of darkness to go before daybreak. First sentence there. I think that was related to one of them. It would be dark for another 3 hours. Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Ben usually rode the sunrise shift. As always, I had the sunrise shift. So again, we have another one there. Correct. The waves were starting to calm down. Don't think that was correct. Let's have a look. The ocean had continued to build with an ever-increasing wind. The swell had grown. Conditions were becoming increasingly frenzied. Okay, so obviously that is not true. It was the first time during the race that Ben had felt he was at risk. I began to feel vulnerable again, so obviously that is not the first time. If it were light, he thought we'd be able to judge the danger. If we could just make it to daybreak, I thought it would be easier to read the waves and prepare for the breakers. Yes. So that would be correct there. That would be the third one. Ben felt homesick. Yes. I thought of my wife back home. I longed to be with her and away from this intimidating ocean. So absolutely, he felt homesick. And that means these last two cannot be correct, but let's just have a look. He was enjoying the early morning shift. There was no sign of daybreak. Intimidating ocean. It doesn't really sound like he's enjoying it, The swell was gathering, the breaking waves were becoming more frequent. Come on, son. I thought, willing the day to break, something wasn't right. So it's not true. There is a bit of a sign. Some day is on the horizon, and then we get into the description of this big event. So question 1, always just very straightforward, 4 marks. And the big thing with question 1, don't waste too much time on it. Obviously I'm demonstrating it here, but do not spend too much time on this. Just in this case on AQA, you just shade the boxes. If it's a different exam board, you just give the relevant information. It requires no analysis. So it's just picking out the information and then presenting the information. That's all you need to do for a content question. So I'll be back shortly with the next question, question 2 on this AQA 2019 English Language Paper 2.